Imagine waking up one morning, and by nightfall, you're in handcuffs. Not because you did anything wrong, not because there's any real evidence against you, but because several strangers pointed at you and said, "That's him." That's exactly what happened to Fernando Bermudez, a young man from New York City who lost 18 years of his life to a crime he never committed. 18 years, no DNA, no weapon, no motive, just eyewitnesses who were wrong and a system that refused to admit it. This is his story. It was 1991. New York City was a different place back then, rough, loud, dangerous in ways most people today can barely imagine. Fernando Bermudez was 21 years old. He had a life, friends, a future. On August 5th of that year, a 16-year-old named Raymond Blount was shot and killed outside a Manhattan nightclub. It was chaos, gunshots, people running, screaming. In the confusion, witnesses saw a young man flee the scene. Within days, Fernando Bermudez was arrested. He told police the same thing from the very first moment. "I wasn't there. I didn't do this." He had witnesses of his own, friends who could confirm he was miles away when the shooting happened. It didn't matter. In 1992, Fernando Bermudez stood trial for murder. He was convicted, and just like that, his life was over. So how does an innocent man get convicted of murder? Here's what the prosecution had: eyewitness testimony. Multiple people who said they saw Fernando at the scene and identified him as the shooter. That's it. No murder weapon was ever found. No physical evidence connected Fernando to the crime. No DNA. Nothing that placed him at that nightclub except the word of people who were terrified, confused, and in the middle of a violent scene. Defense attorneys presented alibi witnesses, real people who saw Fernando somewhere else that night. The jury didn't believe them. Fernando Bermudez was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison. He was 22 years old. Think about that for a moment. At 22, most of us are figuring out our lives, first jobs, relationships, dreams for the future. Fernando was assigned a prison number and told he might never be free again. Prison is designed to break people, and for an innocent man, every single day is its own kind of torture. You wake up knowing you don't belong there. You watch years go by, birthdays, holidays. The world outside keeps moving, and you're frozen in a cell. Fernando never stopped fighting. He filed appeals, he wrote letters, he studied law from inside prison walls, trying to understand a system that had swallowed him whole. But the system pushed back. Appeal after appeal was denied. The court said the conviction was valid. The eyewitnesses had spoken. Case closed. This is one of the darkest truths about wrongful convictions in America. It's not enough to be innocent. You have to prove it. And proving innocence from inside a prison cell, without money, without lawyers, without power, is almost impossible. Almost. Here's the thing about eyewitness testimony. Human memory is not a camera. It doesn't record. It reconstructs. And under stress, in the chaos of a shooting, in the flashing lights of a police interrogation, memories get distorted, confused, sometimes completely wrong. One by one, the eyewitnesses who had put Fernando in prison began to recant. They came forward and said they made a mistake, that they weren't sure, that they had felt pressure, sometimes from police, sometimes from their own fear, to point at someone. Fernando's case was taken up by lawyers who believed in his innocence. They dug through evidence. They tracked down witnesses. They built a new picture of what actually happened that night in 1991. And slowly, agonizingly, the truth began to emerge. The case started falling apart. In 2009, 18 years after Fernando Bermudez was arrested, a judge reviewed his case. And what that judge said was extraordinary. He ruled that Fernando had demonstrated his actual innocence. Not just reasonable doubt, not a technicality, actual innocence. The conviction was thrown out. Fernando Bermudez walked out of prison after 18 years into a world he barely recognized. The technology alone was overwhelming. Smartphones, the internet, a New York City that looked nothing like the one he left behind. But he was free. Freedom, it turns out, doesn't erase what happened. Fernando Bermudez eventually reached a settlement with the state of New York, $4.75 million. At the time, it was the largest wrongful conviction payout in New York State history. His attorney said it clearly: no amount of money gives back 18 years. Fernando himself said the settlement will never erase the injustice. And he's right. Think about everything he missed. His 20s, his 30s, relationships, opportunities, moments that can never be recovered. A version of his life that simply doesn't exist. The people who wrongfully convicted him faced no criminal charges. The system that failed him was never held truly accountable. Fernando Bermudez got $4.75 million and a piece of paper saying he was innocent. That's American justice at its worst, and maybe just barely at its best. Fernando Bermudez is one of thousands. According to the Innocence Project, more than 375 people have been exonerated by DNA evidence alone in the United States. Hundreds more have been freed through other means, which means there are people sitting in American prisons right now, today, who didn't do what they were convicted of doing. That should keep all of us up at night. If this story made you think, hit subscribe. Every week, we cover real cases like this one, cases that prove the justice system is only as good as the people running it, and sometimes those people get it very, very wrong. See you next time.